To start, we're using a Creatcolor pencil, which is a sanguine dark, and this we're going to put in the iris area. We're blocking this in, and make sure you get plenty of coverage all over the area with a pastel pencil. So working your way around the pupil, right up to the edges of the eye. And circular movements are best, commonly known as scumbling. Just keep going round and round in circles with your pencil, and then give it a good rub in afterwards with your finger. Just make sure you've got all that area covered with the colour. And then we're moving on to Umber, which is also a Creatcolor pencil, and we're going around the edge of the eye this time. And keep to the edge, just again small light movements, circular movements going around the eye, and refer to your reference photograph all the time, just making sure that you're popping in the right shapes with this colour. And this is kind of, it's dark, but I would say it's more of a mid-tone colour at this stage. And obviously you've got to make sure you get all the right shapes, the right guidelines in to move on. So just keep placing that pencil where you need it, and just nice circular movements as you go. Okay, just bear in mind how much pressure you're putting on the pencil as well. Probably need to put a medium kind of pressure on the pencil here, so you can anchor your hand down on the desk to lever off that, so you can apply the right kind of pressure. Now we're popping in some black, and this is an ivory black, which is also a Creatcolor. Keep going with this pencil around the eye as well, so obviously referring back to your reference photo, and where it's darker, put this black in over the brown that you've already put in. Okay, moving into the pupil area, there's a few black marks coming out from that area as well, so just move up there and pop those in, and then smooth them down. And then just where it's a bit more blended, you can just use the tip of the pencil just to blend it a little bit, and with light strokes. So ease off the pressure a little bit and just lightly blend into the brown colour. Now we're going to move in with a different colour pencil. This is a burnt sienna, so we're going to go around the eye again, just introducing this colour as we go, just moving out from the brown, and we're going to be taking some patterning now, scumbling in some nice little patterns to give the striations of the iris. And you can do this very loosely, and again you need little pressure with this, so make sure you're leaning on the heel of your hand and taking the pressure off the tip of the pencil, so you can actually very lightly put in these patterns instead of going in too heavy with them. You need to blend as you go, so obviously again ease off the pressure, and then just touch in to the different colour underneath. Then we're going to bring in back in the umber pencil again, and just re-establish some of the darker tones in there, as we've gone over it a few times with different colours. We just need to blend that in to the colour that we just put in, the burnt sienna. And then we're just going smoothing out some of the black lines that we've popped in around the pupil of the eye there, and then again just re-establishing and redefining some of the areas that we've popped in before. When you're doing something like this, you'll go back to the areas time and time again, because you'll start to see that you haven't put enough pastel down, or you need to put a bit of a pattern in somewhere that wasn't existing before. And now we've got back again the ivory black pencil, and again going back, re-establishing some of the darker areas, putting some more patterning in, and blending through a little bit with the existing colours that are underneath. So not pushing too much pastel down, and just making it a little bit darker whilst blending it through with the colour that's already down in the background. Introducing black again to these different areas will just give you more definition of the eyeball and start to make it a little bit more rounded. Now I've grabbed the Faber Castell black and I'm popping that in, which is a darker black. There's two types of black. There's the ivory black Creatcolor, which is kind of a browny black, and then there's the Faber Castell black, which is a very dark blue black. If you pop this in, it really tones everything right down into a nice rich black colour, which is very useful if that's what you want. But be careful with blacks, because they can be over powerful and might not be what you want. But if you look at the reference photograph, you'll see that this particular black is required in these areas, because that's very, very dark. So just going round the rim on the fleshy part of the eye here, just toning it right down with this Faber Castell black. And you'll note that on the pencils, the Creatcolor pencils have the names of the colours on the side. The Faber Castell pencils do not. So if you buy a box of Faber Castell pencils, you'll find a little guide in the back there which tells you which numbers are which colours, and that's the only way to find out. You obviously get to know as you use them more, but obviously they're sold worldwide, so they need a comprehensive sort of guide to which colours are which. Okay, so just going round now, re-establishing the shadows underneath the rim of the eye at the top. If the light's coming down, and obviously there's going to be a shadow mark underneath the rim of the eye there, because the rim will stick out further, so you need to put the darkest bit of the shadowing just underneath that rim. Okay, so I've just popped a little bit of a shadow on there for now, but obviously later on we'll go back to it and make that look a bit darker and shade it down a little bit, blend it down a little bit more when we've got the highlight in. Now we're going in with the Naples yellow, which is a Faber Castell colour, and we're just going to pop in some highlights within the iris area. The highlights are reflecting the light that's coming in from the sky or other sources, and so you want to spike those out a little bit more, make them look a little more bright and colourful, and they will reflect off the different areas within the iris in the eye and make it look a bit more striated. Now going back in on top of those in some instances, just to blend down the colour a little bit, so those bright light areas are actually toned down a little bit, because they're not all really, really bright. So we want to just make them look like they are part of the eye, and just tone them down. And we're using a burnt ochre for this. Again, not too much pressure, because we're actually getting that colour on top and blending it down. Now I'm introducing a little bit of sienna, which is a Creatcolor pencil. It's a lovely, lovely red orange colour, and that will just give a nice rounded colour to the iris, and just pull. It's a bit darker, so obviously it will allow you to pull in some shapes around there as well, and it starts again to make the eyeball look like it's spherical rather than just flat. And you're putting darker colours down, and it also makes it look really quite dramatic. Okay, now I'm going back in with a sanguine dark, just again to give it that under colour that we painted in, we blocked in the first place. It gets a bit lost sometimes, you can go over it too many times with pastel pencil, you just want to re-establish it a little bit. So just poking a little bit of that colour in as well. Now we're going to add in the highlights. So I'm using a zinc white for this, and just very, very gently popping in some colour over the top there. So just underneath the rim, just underneath the shadowing, you want to start putting some shapes in with this colour. And make sure again that you don't press too hard. The pastel paper is a Clairfontaine Pastelmat, and it will take quite a few layers, so there's no need to press too hard, because the paper will still reveal the texture underneath, and it will just pull off the pastel off the pencil. So we're just putting some guidelines in for that highlight right now, so we don't want to overdo it. Now I'm going in with a little bit of ochre light, which is a Creatcolor pastel pencil, and just to put the highlights in which appear underneath the main reflective light area. So the area at the top where you've got the zinc white that we've just put in, you need to put below that in the iris, underneath the pupil, some light that's bouncing off that as well. I'll just tone it down a little bit so it looks more realistic. And that was toned down by the sienna pencil. And then we've got the ivory black again. I'm just coming in and just re-establishing the edges of the pupil there with that, and coming out with the shapes, and just having another look at my shapes that go around the eyeball. Make sure that that's all good. You can see now the shape of the eye is now getting more and more defined. I'm introducing some ivory black there as well now, which actually is toning down again and making the shape a bit more defined. So it's starting to look more and more like an eyeball, more and more spherical as we go on. So I've just added in that black, so now I'm going to go back in with the umber and just blend upwards, making sure that we get some more patterning in there, and the striations of the iris will be more apparent. Okay, and just blending in the black as well, so it doesn't look so harsh, it doesn't look like just a circle that's going around the outside of the eye. It's important to actually blend it down a little bit, make it look a bit more realistic. Now I'm going to put in some glacier blue, which is into the highlight of the eye, and that's a really lovely colour. It's actually, I use that quite a lot to denote the sky. So if the animal's outside, which they regularly are, that's a really nice colour to put in there. It just gives a little bit of extra. Okay, and then I'm going in with a permanent white, which is also a Creatcolor pencil, and just as you can see, that's a really bright white compared to the zinc white that we used earlier, and that will just give a little bit more of a poke to the light there. Now I'm going to introduce a little bit of ivory black into the corner of the eye here, so just lightly covering that area, and then into that I'll introduce some glacier blue, again the Creatcolor, and just to pop in the highlights in there as well. So just gently pressing that onto the area so you get some really nice highlights poking out. Again, refer to your reference photograph where you can see those highlights pop out at you. Okay, here we've got the rim of the eye, and I'm just putting in some little dots. So again, anchor your hand down, your wrist down onto the paper. So you're pressing down on your wrist rather than on the tip of the pencil, and then introduce some little light strokes, little dots, and little tiny marks on the paper, just to give those little raised fleshy looks to the skin that's around the eye. So just gently popping that in. You don't want too much colour. Obviously it's brighter in some areas than others, so you can apply a little bit more pressure there. And just keep going with that. Just all around the eye, just to give a bit of texture. And you can see that it will start to look a little bit more fleshy as you move around. Okay, take your time with this. This video is just slightly speeded up as well. So what you want to do is just enjoy the process and just look backwards and forwards from your reference photo as much as you possibly can do for the detail. And obviously don't get carried away with it. You don't need to put every single spot and mark in there. You just need to give a realistic look. So just have a look at the marks and see what kind of shapes they make and which direction they're going in, and put them down as you want to. So really make sure you get all the highlighted marks in there. And again, you can see how gently I'm touching the paper. It's really hardly there at all, to be honest, and the paper is doing a fantastic job of just snatching the pastel off the pencil. Now I'm going back in with the permanent white, and I'm just really poking out those highlights where you see them most. And don't overdo it because they're not everywhere. You can put more down at this stage and then tone it back with a darker pencil. So I'll be going back in here and just popping some of the ivory black down over the top, just to work that in between the highlights, just to knock them back a bit so they don't stand out too much. Okay, so I'll grab that pencil now, and here's the black Faber Castell, and we'll go back in, re-establishing the shadow underneath that rim of the eye there. Just go around the edge, and you see that I've left a bit of a lighter bit above. That sort of denotes the line of the eye, the line of the fleshy bit that comes round. And again, using circular movements with your pencil tends to blend down a little bit more, or light strokes as I'm doing here. That will just serve to blend it rather than to just put a harsh line in there. So again, just softly touching the paper. As I said, this pastel paper, the Clairfontaine Pastelmat, is brilliant. It will just take off the pastel off your pencil, and it really does. It just easily allows you to put some colour down without overstaining, especially with the black. So as I said before, I'm going over the highlighted area now and just toning that down a little bit, and just moving the pastel pencil over the top. It just encourages the pastel to come off the pencil if you do it lightly onto the paper, and you get a nice soft look. Right, I'm just putting in some extra deep lines in down the side there, just to say where the rim is of the eye there, and then just softening off the highlights again as I go. And then I'm introducing again the bright permanent white, and I'm just going to put a highlight that's just underneath the rim here, just below the eyeball, just to the side of the eyeball rather. Okay, so what you want to do then is after you've put in the white, you need to then bring back the black and just blend that down again, obviously because it looks a bit like it's just floating on the surface there. So we'll bring back into there the black and just tone it down. And again, I'm using the Creatcolor black just to gently soften those edges off. As you can see, I've just kind of taken it back a bit by going over the edge. Here the line, the end of the lines there, and going over the edges. Right, and just going round again with the soft ivory black around some of the highlighted areas, around the fleshy bits here. And just toning those down a little bit more after looking at my reference photograph. And then just adjusting around the edge of the fleshy bit of the eyelids there, just to soften it off as it goes into the fur line. Otherwise it looks too harsh, and we want a softer looking line around that area. And just do a little bit of adjustment on the top as well, although it is a bit harder on the top line anyway, but as it's a nice hairy dog, we want it to look a bit softer. So keep moving the pencil around and just softening off all the way around. And again, circular movements, little scumbly marks. And now we're going to just go back in with the umber and just to darken some areas down a little bit more again with that. And you feel, I mean, all the time I revisit areas, and I'd have to go back and look at my reference photograph and take the colours back in again and re-establish them. And here is the Faber Castell black. I'm just going back in with that again, just to make sure that everything's dark enough as I want it to be. And just going back into the shadow area again as well, just to make sure that I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to go and show you some little tips on putting fur in. This is a light ochre Creatcolor, and just adding some fur around the eye that goes into the fleshy part of the eye. And what I'm doing, you can do forward or backward strokes to put fur in. Obviously I'm working in towards the eye, and it's easier to do strokes that are coming in towards you rather than out. Okay, you get some nice light strokes. Again, if you have a nice sharp pencil, you'll get some fine lines, and that's what you want to do. And you want to bring those strokes down into the fleshy part of the eye, and whilst you're anchoring your wrist down again with a pencil, you want to lightly put these strokes in. If they appear to be brighter, then obviously you can push harder with a pencil, but obviously a lot of them are light and fine hairs, so the brighter they are, you want to press a bit harder with a pencil. As you see now, we're putting these fur lines in. It's starting to set the eye back into the socket there, and it just makes it look more realistic, obviously, if you put the fur in, but it just starts to position the eye properly and make it look like it's a little bit more real. So as I'm going around here, obviously I'm alternating the thickness of the hairs that I'm putting in, because some of them are a bit more wiry, some of them are very fine, and I just want to make sure that I get that right. So keep going around the eye and just putting all of the hairs in that you can see poking out from there. Again, alternating your strokes so it looks more natural. So just alter your hand position as well, that will help. Just move it backwards and forwards, twisting the pencil in your hand as you go. Keep putting that colour down all over, and remember to twist the pencil in your hand as you're putting the strokes down so that you get nice uneven lines coming onto your paper. And go around the eye, just checking your photo reference, making sure that you're putting all the hairs going in all the right directions, but don't be a slave to it. You don't have to actually put every single hair that you see on the photograph into the painting. You just need to know the direction of the hairs really and how they appear on the fur appears on the dog's coat there, which direction they're pointing in, and then just make the rest up. Just lose yourself in it a little bit, enjoy the process. And then we're going to go for a burnt ochre pencil now, and then just blend those quite bright light ochre tones down a little bit and bed the hairs in just a little bit into the fur. Make it look a little bit more natural. So just do that where you need to and just tone it and just make it look like it's supposed to replicate the fur on the body. And then we're going to grab the sienna pencil now and take that darker tone down in between the hairs. There's quite a rich reddy brown, this sienna. It's a Creatcolor pencil, and it just gives you a really nice tone. And this is a beagle's eye, and so they've got quite a lot of those reddy tones in their fur. Again, just take the colour around and pop it in, not all over, but just intersperse it where you think it's necessary. So just take it in between the hairs, just to break them down a little bit. And again, if you go on the ends of the hairs, you'll bed those hairs down, so you'll make them look like they're actually appearing out of the skin rather than just floating on the surface and looking like colours you've just put a line on the paper with. Now we're going in with the burnt sienna, which is a slightly more browny, reddy colour, and that just takes it down just a little bit further. Just adds a little bit of extra oomph in between the brighter colours. Again, take it where you need it. Just going round, just double checking your reference photo again. Remember to stand back, have a look, and then go back in. And finally we're going to put some ochre back in between the lines, and we've finished adding the darker colours in. You see that's got a really nice tone down now. Now we just put the light ochre again, just in a few places, just to add a few additional highlights. Just taking that around the eye. Make that fur stand out. Some areas obviously are brighter than others, so that's why I'm going in a bit heavy there, and then just taking in lighter strokes in other areas. Okay. So that's it for the a little bit of fur tutorial in the end there. I hope you've enjoyed doing this, and I hope to put another video on here soon. Thank you.